In praise of older friends. When I lived in New York City, especially after moving from Big Law to the startup world, my social scene became essentially age segregated. Everyone was my age, plus or minus a few years. And we were all in it together, figuring out work and relationships at the same time, so we could commiserate over our terrible bosses, share dating horror stories, and bond over our collective imposter syndrome. But we were also quite limited. No one had much perspective yet beyond our shared anxieties. We're all asking the same question. Should I quit this job? Is this relationship going anywhere? Am I behind in life? But none of us had lived long enough to offer real answers. Yeah, we could provide encouragement and validation, but that was about it. Country life feels completely different. Here, I live in a multi-generational community where age mixing happens naturally. So yes, I spend plenty of time with other parents my age, comparing notes on kindergarten drama and sleep schedules. Yes, we're still working on that. But I also regularly connect with people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and even 80s. So neighbors, friends, parents, the people I meet around town. My kids are regularly surrounded by a mix of ages. I was reflecting recently on how grateful I am for female friends in their 50s. They possess a wisdom that only comes from decades of living, and they've usually crossed into that magical stage where they simply don't give a damn about all the small stuff. They used to worry about what everyone thought, but then they just stopped. And it's liberating to be around. They tell me exactly where they think that they went wrong and right raising their kids. They tear up while reminding me that the exasperating days when my 5-year-old insists on climbing onto my lap while I'm leading a meditation session are actually the ones that I will look back on with nostalgia. Because if someone my own age told me that, I might squint and cock my head skeptically. But when they say it, I believe them. These women have seen their children grow up and move away. They've navigated divorces, career changes, aging parents, cancer diagnoses, and devastating loss. So they've learned which battles are worth fighting, and they don't hesitate to tell me which hills I shouldn't go die on. I've got some pretty wise friends in their 30s and 40s, but we're still too in the weeds to offer each other this type of clarity. Take my neighbor, Susan. She's in her early 80s, but she has the vitality of someone decades younger. After raising her children abroad in Lebanon for a decade, she returned to our town where she'd once attended finishing school, really, and became one of our little town's grand dames. She comes from an aviation family and took flying lessons up after her 80th birthday, proving that it's never too late to expand your horizons and just do things. Susan is now a bonus grandma to my kids, and we celebrate holidays together. When I told her about this piece, she exclaimed, "Oh Lord, if I only spent time with people my own age, I'd die." And she was joking, but only sort of. We've all seen too many older folks waste away in isolation. Susan thrives because she's tapped into every generation, keeping her perpetually young. Or consider the local sculptor and toy maker, who my son has affectionately renamed Geppetto. He's teaching my boy the art of woodworking, but also the open-ended joy of creativity. When they work together, I see Geppetto's inner child emerge too. He tells me that he's done with adults except as chaperones. And Geppetto reminds me of my own grandfather, long gone, who showed my brother and me not just how to build telescopes, but how to marvel at the stars. These intergenerational friendships give me and my children access to stories, skills, and perspectives that we'd rarely encounter in our age-segregated world back in New York City. And this isn't just hokey, old people are people too kind of stuff. My 5-year-old genuinely thinks that Susan and Geppetto are two of the coolest people that he knows. My town recently celebrated Community Day, and the scene perfectly captured what I love about multi-generational living. Our little 3-block downtown is like a time machine set to 70 years ago. Packs of beagles and acoustic guitar players spilled into the streets flanked by police SUVs, forming impromptu parades. Babies waved at older folks who smiled and pinched chubby cheeks. Local kids sold lemonade and fresh veggies to raise money for the soccer team and the farmer's market. People swapped stories, admired handmade projects, and dug through vintage trinkets. It was magic, the kind that happens when community becomes the shared focus. Honestly, it's the closest thing I've experienced to Burning Man in the default world, and I'm not just talking about the Bubble Zone dance party that broke out outside the town's library. I know not everyone has access to a small town where generations naturally intermingle, But I think about friends still living in cities who are intentionally volunteering to deliver lasagnas to homebound seniors, or my recent podcast guest, Sammy Packard, who's building intentional multi generational community in Berkeley. The need for this type of connection feels especially urgent. We live in a time of manufactured division. We're exhausted by the unfathomable idiocy of the other side, and so we retreat to rapidly narrowing echo chambers. It can feel like that scene from Indiana Jones where we're desperately trying to hurtle towards uncertain safety while the walls close in on us. At its core, life is relational and recursive. We're meant to learn across generations and pass wonder and wisdom back and forth. The young offer energy, fresh perspectives, and hope for the future. The old offer context, hard earned wisdom, and the peace or resignation that comes from having survived many cycles of change. Both sides are impoverished when we're cut off from one another. I'm doing my darndest to pry myself away from the narrow nuclear family only conditioning so prevalent in our culture, the American myth that we should be self sufficient units raising our children in isolation, figuring everything out on our own. But we're a tribal species, so find your village. And if you can't find one, start building one. This is Practically on Purpose with Allie Canton.